how do you figure out which areas you need to master? So, it could be that whenever in DI you get a sunburst chart, you struggle. If we are getting ready for a party, there is a particular device that we use very often, very frequently. What is that called? So, this is the key to improve week after week. Welcome to MBA Wala, and in this session, you and I will sit down together and explore a very important topic, and that topic is how do I improve? So, I have been working, and now how do I take my scores up, and that too consistently, week after week, maybe even day after day? How do we go ahead and do that? So, the question that I have for you is, how do we improve our scores? So, we know that there is a syllabus that we need to go through, but then will going through the syllabus guarantee a 99 percentile plus rank when it comes to the results? Not really. You actually need to go ahead and master that syllabus. But then, how do you figure out which areas you need to master? So, that's going to form a theme of our discussion. So, let's just begin. How do we improve our scores? We improve our scores by improving. But what? We improve by improving ourselves. Isn't it? We improve by conquering our weaknesses. So you realize there are some areas that you are still not comfortable with. It could be that when it comes to a philosophy based passage in RCs, you struggle. It could be that whenever in DI you get a sunburst chart, you struggle. It's possible that whenever you see a question asking you for permutation and combination, you struggle. Isn't it? So maybe there are certain areas that are weaknesses and you need to then conquer those, or maybe it's simply about mastering that syllabus, but then which part, which area to focus on, how do you get to decide that? So the best way, or in fact, why best, I'd say the only way to decide that is by exposing yourself to the elements. Now come to think of it, if we are getting ready for a party, there is a particular device that we use very often, very frequently. What is that called? That is called a mirror. So while we are getting ready, we frequently check in with the mirror, and it is the mirror that tells us whether everything is all right or not. In fact, before I recorded this session, I should have stood in front of a mirror to check whether my hair are all right or not, whether my collar is all right or not. Unfortunately, I did not do any of those things. So it's possible that you see messy here. Who knows, I may have a side of the collar tucked in. Thank God it is not the case, right? But then if I were to stand in front of a mirror, the mirror would tell me that, hey, you need to fix your hair, you need to fix your collar. It's the exact same thing in a preparation as well. You need to stand in front of a mirror, and that mirror is called a mock. And the truth is that in this entire journey, if you're not writing mocks, you're not really going to know where you stand. So as I so very often say, no mock, no glory. So writing the mocks is absolutely essential. In one of our earlier sessions, we have talked about how many mocks you need to write, etc. So I'll not really go ahead and get back into that. But then please remember, the more you sweat in practice, the less you bleed in battle, and therefore it is absolutely critical for you to write a certain number of mocks that are optimal for you. And then the other question that I face very often nowadays is, when should you start writing the mocks? And I give them answers like, start writing the mocks when your syllabus is over by at least 70%. And if you are tougher, you can actually write it sooner. But then my short answer to this question generally is, today is as good a day as any other day to write a mock. I mean, what is the worst that is going to happen? You won't perform very well, but that's okay, no? You don't write a mock to ace the mock. You actually write a mock to figure out where you stand. And so what if the mock tells us that, hey, we actually stand way behind in that ranking. At the end of the day, we are competing against everyone else. We need to ensure that we outperform those people. And the sooner you get to know your current status, I think the more accurate your strategy and your decisions subsequently are going to be. But then merely writing the mocks is not going to help you improve your scores. Your scores improve when you go ahead and analyze your performance in that mock thoroughly. So this is the key to improve week after week. And at this juncture, you may want to know, okay, then all right, I've heard of analysis, but what do we truly mean by this, and how do I go about analyzing the mocks? So let me take you through this journey. So starting with our step 0. Treat the mocks as if they were actual exams. So whenever you sit down and write a mock, first and foremost, hype yourself. If you want to get the best out of it, take it seriously. Do not think of it as a mock. Think of it as the actual CAT exam where you are supposed to perform, right? And if you do that, you will see that you would be able to then figure out quite a few of these things correctly. So once you are done writing the mock, that is when the next thing comes into the picture. So during the mock, you'd put your strategy to test, attempt all the questions that you can, whatever strategy that you may have. I have hinted at some or the other things during our work together. But whatever strategy that you use, in case it is working, great. If it is not working, you know that it ought to change. So keep an eye on that strategy. So there are times when you can improve your score merely by focusing on strategy. See, I've seen people who start attempting from question 1 and then they start moving towards question number 24 if it is VARC, or question number 22 if it is DILR or quant. So can we change that strategy and improve our score? So what is it that I want you to do? I want you to start with a list of the entire syllabus of every single section. So for instance, for RCs, it is going to be all those question types, all those different genres, those subject matters, those 4 questions of verbal ability. In DI, it is going to be different types of visual representations of data. Is it a radar chart? Is it a sunburst chart? Is it a pie chart, table, bar graphs, line graphs? In LR, it's going to be different types of, once again, question types, right? Are you talking about games and tournaments? Are you talking about reasoning based DI? Are you talking about puzzles? Are you talking about seating arrangement? Different question types, right? Same goes for quant, arithmetic, algebra, modern math, geometry, everything. So for each one of the sections, divide your entire syllabus into 3 columns. So there is a column that consists of your areas of comfort. These are areas where your accuracy rate is typically above 70%, 70% or above. Then you have these areas of discomfort where your accuracy rate is below 40%, and then you have a lot of in between areas where your accuracy rate is between 40 and 70, right? Now you realize a lot of people go ahead and end up wasting time by attempting questions of this area. They take your time. So whenever you see questions from this area, you read it and then you think, should I attempt it? And almost invariably you do go ahead and attempt it. And then when you attempt it, there are days when you get it right, there are days when you get it wrong. So it eats away a lot of time without giving you a consistently high score. So in the exam, please make sure that you do not touch these questions. For all intent and purposes for that exam, think of these as areas of discomfort. Your first job is to go ahead and attempt questions of this column. And it's only when you exhaust questions of this column that you move towards the questions that belong to the other areas, right? And how do you realize this? You realize this by maintaining an error log, by keeping an eye on the pattern of your mistakes. And I'm going to go ahead and talk about this later. So step 2, once that mock is over, attempt the leftover question. See, there are times when you could not attempt a question merely because you ran out of time. So phase 1 is when you solve it under timed conditions. So say VARC. You've gone through the mock, now you sit down with VRC and you give yourself 40 more minutes or 20 more minutes, whatever. And then attempt the questions. If you could solve all the questions, great. In case you are still left with some questions, then phase 2 is there are no time restraints. Go ahead, make sure that you attempt all the questions that you can. There can still be questions that you cannot answer. Do the same thing for DILR, quant, and that is how we say that you need to allocate at least 2x the time of the mock in order to analyze. So after going through that entire exercise, you'd notice that there are some questions. So you check the answers. The questions that you got wrong, make sure that you go ahead and attempt them again. And after attempting them, check again and see whether you have gotten them right or not. If not, you'd attempt it again. So after all of this is done, now comes the next part where you look at the solutions for unattempted and wrong questions, and then you ask yourself, yeah, why could I not attempt it, or why did I end up getting it wrong? So you'd realize that it can be a knowledge issue. Maybe this is an area that tested a concept that you are not familiar with. Or maybe this is an area that requires a certain degree of skill that you have not developed yet. This is going to happen quite often when it comes to VARC. It could be that this question requires you to follow a certain technique, but then you did not follow that technique and that is why you ended up getting it wrong. In which case you need to go back to your lecture, figure out the right technique, or maybe actually why lecture, in case you have the test pass and you're writing the mocks there, you have these video solutions. You can go ahead and refer to those video solutions and they can reorient you, right? So this activity basically helps you figure out the gaps that exist in your knowledge today. And once you are here, step 7 is assign your level of difficulty to every question. But what according to you the difficulty level would be? Is it easy? Is it moderate? Is it difficult? Once you start crossing 85-90 percentile, this thing will come in handy. In case you are struggling to say reach 70 percentile yet, then think of this step as a step which is not very useful for you right now, but just go ahead, go through this activity. You realize the difficulty level is highly subjective. Go ahead, assign your difficulty. So irrespective of what we have told you about that question, easy, difficult, forget all that. Just go ahead and figure out your difficulty level. And finally, in step 6, now you create a plan to increase your score in the next exam. So I'll take you back to those 3 columns, right? You have areas of comfort, you have areas of discomfort, you have those in between 40 to 70% areas, right? Now along with that, now you also know the gaps that exist in your knowledge through that analysis. So ask yourself, is there a pattern in your mistakes? Is there a particular question type that you get wrong quite often? Maybe it is identify the inference questions in RC. Maybe it is geometry based questions in quantitative aptitude. So figure out, is there a pattern in your mistake, and were there some questions that you could not attempt because you've not studied that area yet, because that's a chapter that you haven't even gone through. So look at these 2 things along with this third thing, and that is frequency of that area, the frequency of the questions of that type getting asked, or frequency of the questions of that area getting asked. So I'm sure you'd figure out quite a few patterns, but you need to prioritize, right? So the areas that you get wrong very often, or the chapters that you haven't gone through, if those are highly frequent, then you want to prioritize them. If they are rare, then you can afford to deprioritize them, right? So you have all your syllabus here. If you figure out that, hey, there is a pattern in your mistake and that area as of today belongs here. So between this week and next week, you can assign a certain number of hours. Let's take an example. Say you are getting identify the inference questions wrong in RCs. So you can assign, let's say over the course of next week, I am going to devote 10 hours to RC's inference based questions. In these 10 hours, I will spend 1 hour reviewing the concept, and for the next 9 hours, I am going to attempt more inference based questions from critical reasoning, and I will revisit all the inference based questions that I got wrong after that. And once you engage in this exercise, chances are that you become comfortable. Chances are that inferences that were here, they become an area of comfort. And now, because it is also a high frequency area, when you write the next mock, you are going to get 2 extra questions right, 1 extra question right, maybe even 3 extra questions right. Remember, in the ZAT exam last year, we had 10 inference based questions. If you were to write that exam, you could have gotten 10 extra questions right. And the week after that, you'd once again write the mock, you'd go through this entire exercise, you'd identify some more area. Do that for every section. Just identify 1 or 2 things to work on. Allocate a certain number of hours that you think are adequate. In case you are not very sure of whether how many hours are going to be adequate, you can always talk to the faculty members, take their input. So essentially keep on repeating this process, and that will ensure that you keep on learning week after week, and eventually, no matter where you are today, that mirror, those mocks plus analysis, will lead to a great score, and that too in a gradual manner where you'd see that improvement very regularly after every mock. Okay? So please remember that knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. It's only when you know what you need to improve, it's only when you know what kind of mistakes you make, you can move towards the next level. So that's it for this particular session. So do write mocks, do analyze. After every mock, identify 1 action item for each one of the 3 sections, at least 1 action item. Execute that, and that knowledge will take you towards your dream scores. So that's it from me today. I'll see you in the next one. Take care and have a great time ahead.